Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Class Zero Soldiers podcast, episode Who Needs Numbers? I am your host, Zero.exe, joined by, once again, welcome back, Soldier by Night, aka Soldier. How's it going, man?
Thanks, Zero. It's always good to be back.
Yeah, for those who don't know, he was on a whirlwind Europe tour. He decided to abandon us all and see the greater world.
Yeah, it's been an adjustment to be back for sure. Um, I went to Europe for the first time, and it was a lovely time. The jet lag was real. It was a 9 hour difference.
I was just about to ask that. I'm like, that's like multiple time zone differences. So, like, when you said it was an adjustment, I'm like, yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I didn't change my work schedule, which was fortunate because then I got to actually enjoy the daytime. Because typically my schedule is like 9 to 5, so it's like nice to be able to be free during that time over there. It just kind of was its own battle at 6 p.m. starting and then ending at 3 a.m. But overall, I got adjusted pretty quick. I think it was gonna be like 4 or 5 days to get adjusted, and then pretty much the same number of days on my way back or been back, and it's been good. It's I wake up a little earlier than normal, which I'm really stoked about because now my days I feel like I can do a lot more in the morning now.
Yeah, that's cool. I wish I could do that, honestly. Who knows? Maybe that'll happen in the next month or two. But I mean, since I haven't had to work, I've been waking up at like 11 o'clock if nobody bothers me. It's been kind of nice.
Hey man, I respect a stay-at-home dad. It's all right. That's still a job.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh
Pouring
yeah,
cereal, it's hard work, you know?
exactly. Cleaning diapers,
Oh,
you know.
thank God I don't have to do any of that anymore.
Yeah, it's over, but at the same time, apparently people are wearing diapers in line for the Switch too. How about that?
Is that a real thing, or did you just make that up to put a
No, I
segue in here?
I read about it.
Oh, okay. I was like, man, your segues are getting good. He still got his fastball.
It's pretty crazy though. I'm like, no way. That's got to be some BS. Like, how if people are in line right now, that's got to be crazy. Like, how are you in line? What do you not work? Speaking of jobs, it's like, how do you
Right.
wait for a release? What is it, like a week now? I think it's a week,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't have a job and I'm not waiting an entire week in front of a store. Are you crazy? Like, I had
I,
pre-ordered online like a normal person and I'll show up 2 hours before they hand them out.
I bet you half those people have a pre-order online but
That's even worse.
want to hold it in hand, and they want the rush of, like, who knows, right? I'm just kind of talking out my ass now, so I have no idea, but like, I think the only time I did a midnight, it wasn't really a midnight. Let's see here. The last time I did a midnight anything was with you, actually. I think we did it for
Really?
Scarlet and Violet. Yeah. Um, it was Scarlet and Violet. I think we did it like around 10 p.m. right around then at GameStop in front of my old apartment when GameStop used to be there.
Yeah,
Um,
it was a very like nonchalant, really low key kind of thing. We were just like, "Oh, hey, the game's technically out. You want to go see if they're handing them out?" And then we just kind
yeah,
of swung by and they were, and we're like, "Oh, cool. Let's get our games."
and there was a little bit of a line. It wasn't too big. I think we got Taco Bell right before because I lived right next to one of those. So like we just got some food and like hung out. But it wasn't like a crazy thing. Like Mario Odyssey back in 2018
17.
was, oh yeah, wait, 17 or
Yep.
18?
It was
Was it?
launch year 17.
Oh, it was oh, okay. So then fall that year. Yeah,
It just felt like a whole year later because like we had so many games released for the Switch between March 3rd and the release of Odyssey, which was I think it was in October.
I also relocated that year. Like toward the end, I went from living in Vegas my whole life to living in LA. So it was very like big life event kind of thing. So yeah, there was a lot of people in line for that one. That one I'll never forget because it wrapped around the GameStop.
Hmm.
Really cool that it was like probably almost 100 people. It was like a good 70, 80 people, it felt like. Um, and I don't think I've felt that much of a hype until I got maybe my iPhone 5S back in 2013 or some shit like that. I think it was 2013. Either way, um, what have you been playing? Have you been playing anything recent?
So in terms of what I've been playing recently, I've got a couple games I've been doing since I've had time. I jumped back into Sea of Stars for a little bit, trying to clear some of my backlog out before Switch 2. So I jumped back into that. And I found out, actually, going on a little tangent here, they fixed one of my biggest issues with the game. I didn't even realize that they patched this in, but one of the things that kind of bugged me is the most reliable way to heal yourself was using a level 3 combo skill. But in order to use a level 3 skill, you have to like build up the combo meter, but battles don't last long enough for you to get them unless you're in a boss battle. So like regular encounters, you get to like 2.5 combos, and then you'd win the fight. So it's like, okay, so I can't use the level 3 special. But then, since they patched it, you now keep your combo meter even after battle. So you actually do have the opportunity to use that as a heal, or just to get more combo attacks in general, so you don't have to heal. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that they fixed that or added that in.
I mean, that's pretty important. That's kind of what people had problems with like old turn-based RPGs like Persona 3 and Persona 4 just running out of MP or
SP, yeah.
SP in those games. Yeah, it kind of sucks. I mean, that can disrupt the whole flow of gameplay if you can't heal correctly, or in your case, you have to do like certain. I mean, that's good of them to listen to players and actually add that in later.
Yeah, it wasn't a slog going through dungeons since they changed that. Because just for context, for those who haven't played the game, in terms of healing items, you have to like cook things, but you can only hold up to 10 total cooked items at any given time. So your resources are very limited until you get to a campfire. And I don't know, I don't like having to constantly craft something just to heal myself. Whereas, in other games like Cleric's Cure Expedition 33, you have like the flasks and the tints, which just automatically refresh every time you get to an expedition flag, which is really good game design. So I love the way they do that. But yeah, so Sea of Stars, it's definitely been improved. I know it's got a big DLC expansion either coming out soon or it's already out. I'm not entirely sure, but something for me to dive into once I beat the main story there.
Speaking of story, how do you like the story for that game?
And Sea of Stars,
Yeah, so far.
it's pretty good. I don't think it's anything like phenomenal. I know I was really hyped pre-release for Sea of Stars, but that
Hmm.
honeymoon phase kind of died out, and I kind of stopped playing the game. Especially because of my issues with the combat, it was hard to just stay on it. But I've been enjoying my revisit. It's definitely a much better experience now.
I'm happy to hear it. I have heard, let's just say, mixed reviews for that game so far.
Just in all, I'd say it's probably a solid 8 out of 10, but that can change depending on what changes as I get further in the game. I'm pretty deep into it. I'm about 20 hours in, so it's not like I'm still like in the beginning areas. I've put a good chunk of time into it.
Oh yeah, 20 hours is pretty good, especially for turn-based. I imagine it's probably a 50-something hour game, not including DLC.
I think it was rated to be like 35 to 50, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range. So I'm about halfway through it, give or take.
it's not too bad. Uh, I tried the demo. I never actually played the game itself. I remember starting the game because I think it was on back when I had the PlayStation Premium for a limited time. It was actually available, so I think I had it downloaded and I played for a few hours, but I never really got into it. I'm going to be honest with you. It would probably I would probably play through Golden Sun 1 and 2 before I played through again before I played Sea of Stars for a first time. Just because
That's fair.
I miss those games, and I learned recently in the last 2 years they made a community ROM hack of Golden Sun 1 and 2 called Reloaded. I believe it's version 1.8 for both, and you can actually transfer everything, and it works. And it's just like some balances to the battling, fixes, and things like that that the game never got. Just some quality of life stuff. Like I think you can actually choose to teleport to towns in the ROM hack, which is kind of cool. So it uses the same animation to go to each town, like the animation of exiting a dungeon where you kind of turn into
Yeah.
a bunch of little like orbs and then you go back. It's like that animation, but you can use it, I think, in the overworld or something like that.
That's something
Um,
Golden Sun 1 really needed, because you get your
yeah,
airship in 2, but, like, the original
yeah.
game, and not that the world map was huge, but it was very, like, convoluted, and, like, certain areas were landlocked by mountains, so, like, the only way to get back to really old towns was to go through, like, 3 or 4 caves. So that is one quality of life update that I really I think definitely adds to the experience.
Oh
The
yeah,
backtracking isn't as isn't as painful.
exactly. And hey, it probably helps that the first game is a lot smaller in scope.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if I'm gonna play Sea of Stars, I'll probably play those again. But I know recently you beat those
Yeah,
again
I
on
got my
Switch,
my
right?
replay throughs of
Yeah.
Golden Sun 1 and 2. As soon as they added them to the Switch, online, I jumped into them. Speaking of, actually, another game that I've been playing on and off is, Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, since they finally added that. I know there's a couple podcast episodes I mentioned, like, "Hey, we got Fire Emblem 7, like, where the hell Sacred Stones?" And last year of the Switch, they decided to finally throw us a bone, so I've been enjoying that.
When was the last time you played Sacred Stones before that?
Oh, man. Um, Probably when I had it was on the DS when I had, the super card, the flash card that could play GBA games. I had
Oh, the
that on
purple
there.
one. You had the purple one?
It's not purple, it's black. Well, it has a purple
Oh
menu, if that's what you mean.
no, I'm thinking of one that takes a mini SD. Do you know what mini SDs
No.
are?
I do. I've never had to use one in my life, because for the entire existence of mini SD, devices that I own have all used either a full size or a micro, so it's
I
I've
love
never
that.
needed one.
I love that you know what it is. Anyway, going back to what you're not to get off topic here, but so
Oh,
that was
this
that
whole
was the
this whole
last
episode's
time.
off topic. Don't even
Oh,
worry about
cool, cool, cool,
it.
cool. So you played it off of like a little flash cart kind of thing.
Yeah, so I bought the Supercar DS2 back when it came out, because it was back when there was like an arms race between like
Oh
flashcard
yeah,
makers.
DS2. I know. Now I get it. DS2. They make quite a lot of flash carts. They
Yeah.
make the obviously the DS ones. They're probably most famous for.
Yeah, it is a DS flash card, and it came out around the same time as the
Oh, oh, oh,
R4i. Do you
oh.
remember the
Okay.
R4 and the R4i?
Yes, I had the R4i. I actually still have one, I think.
Nice.
And yeah, I used it very lightly, but when they figured out how to crack the DSi, it didn't matter
Yep.
anymore.
That's exactly it. So the R4i was the first card to actually work on a DSi, because
Hmm.
when we went from DS Lite to DSi, the flash cards, they basically patched out with Nintendo security, and every super card, or every flash card for the DS basically stopped working. So they had to make new cards that got around it. And
Hmm.
the reason I got the super card DS2 is specifically because not only did it work on the DSi, but when the 3DS came out, it also worked on there. Not for 3DS games, mind you, but it at least worked for DS games on a 3DS, which is what I wanted. And of course, the big feature of that is it had its own like processor built into the cartridge to be able to give it extra power to run Game Boy Advance games through emulation. So I can emulate everything up through Game Boy Advance and Super Nintendo all from that flash card.
Which is pretty nice because it offers like save states, right?
Yep, save states. It's a little bit more robust than the one on the built-in on the 3DS, just because those, I think they could do save states, but they can't like rewind and all that. They're a lot more limited than the regular Game Boy ones, where you could do the rewind and everything. Because I
Okay.
think, yeah, no, those ones didn't have save states, because they were based on the ones that came out during the Ambassador program. So
Oh,
if
right.
you tap the screen, it was just, hey, do you want to return back to the menu? So it didn't have save states.
There was nothing extra. No frills.
Nothing. Nope.
Yeah. All
Thankfully, they
right.
fixed that on the Switch, but I mean, you
Did
know.
you use the save states that are available in the Switch Online? Like, do you actively use
Oh
those?
yeah, 100%. I use
Yeah.
those. I use the fast forward and the rewind. It's such a nice convenience feature to have. Like, even if you're a purist and want to just play the games, that's fine. They're there for everyone else that wants to use them though. And man, it's so nice.
Damn, do you think that's going to be around for the GameCube? When for Switch 2?
You know, I don't believe it has the rewind, but I'm almost positive that the save states are already confirmed to be a part of the system.
Man, it would be cool if it did have fast forward and you could play some of the role playing games like Pokemon a little faster. That would be nice.
Yeah, I don't
Hey,
know how that's going to work with the Pokemon games.
yeah. Imagine if they released Pokemon Box for the GameCube Online. It's
I don't
stupid.
even remember what you could get out of that.
It was just a bunch of boxes. I know that sounds obvious, but um,
You don't say.
well, you could also forego buying a Game Boy player and play your Ruby and Sapphire through it. I know that you could do that um, on your TV. So if you didn't have a Game Boy player, you could play through there. Um, there might have been, I think, maybe in the Japanese version of it, there was probably like a bonus or something. I don't remember if there. Yeah, I think it's like some. It's not like a legendary. It's like a Pokemon with like a move or a berry or something like that. But I'm probably wrong. I don't know. But gosh, most expensive game on GameCube. I wonder what it's going to be like, right? Like the market for GameCube. Not that Switch Online has never affected, I think, the hardware. Um, for like SNES or I don't think you know what I mean. Like I think because they're so different, right? One's a subscription plus it's digital. It's not like you're getting anything that's similar. Um, and what's interesting now, you're not going to be able to hook up your Switch 2 to a CRT to play retro because I don't think the Switch 2 can go down to 480p anymore. But who knows?
Hmm. I, I didn't even think about that. Is that really a thing? Because I know they showed that little video with the output modes, but maybe it outputs in 720p as the lowest, and it just downsamples if it's on a CRT. Because how does that work with like PS5 and Xbox Series? Like if you plug those to CRT, they would still work, right? I don't think they just don't work.
I don't think those can go that low though. So the only issue with that, not if you don't go low enough, like you said, 720, it's just going to look too small on the CRT. So you're just going to, text is going to be ineligible or not ineligible, ill,
Ineligible.
ill,
Ineligible to be read. Yeah, that saves free.
it's illegible is what I'm looking for, right? I think that's the
Yeah.
word. Jesus, but yeah, so like like I think that was a neat little thing that the Switch still had from the pre HD era of like I think the Wii U had it too. If anything,
Yeah.
they probably had the same. They probably had the same like output minus well obviously the Switch is just well actually no wait they're both HDMI only, right? The Wii U and the Switch.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
But I
Then
mean,
yeah.
let me ask you this because I don't know a whole lot about this with the retro scene. I know you're more into these. You've got tons of different retro hardware, your analog pockets and all that. Uh, are there not converters of like male HDMI to like female composite cable or something that you can plug into pretty much any console to get it to convert a signal readable on an older TV, even if it doesn't support that resolution in the output modes?
Yeah, there is.
Okay.
I have one and it's good, but it takes some fiddling around with. You got to put it into a 720p mode to
Yeah.
see if that works, and then it'll show up. And it's nice, but man, it is such a novelty because it's like I don't know, it's not intended, right? So You just have to think of it like that, where it's like there's going to be some things that are not great. Now, here's the thing: I have small CRTs, so I'm kind of speaking from someone who has a bit of a disadvantage with CRTs. Even though I like them, I'm not trying to haul a really nice big Trinitron, but that's going to be your best bet, especially the Trinitrons that used to go up to, you know, 720p or 1080i or something to that effect. Like they even have HDMI inputs, and maybe it's the flat screen glass on the front of the screen before we transition completely to LCD. Um, but yeah, that's a whole thing. So on those monitors, you're going to have a better experience going down from the Switch. I know people have like videos you can watch where they've got like Breath of the Wild on there. They've got some Mario Odyssey or like playing online Splatoon or something on an old big CRT, and that's pretty fun. So yeah, Switch 2, going back to that, I don't know. I don't think I saw anything remotely like that, and if so, maybe it just wasn't shown, or maybe it's just not going to be possible to go down to 480i or 480p.
That sounds
But
like a very, very niche use
yeah,
case
there's not
anyway.
really a
So
need for it. Exactly.
I
There's
don't
not
think
really
it
a
would
need for it.
be a huge loss if it's like, oh, this doesn't work on 480 monitors. Because, I
Yeah,
mean, we're what, 23 years into the HD era? I think we could finally leave
yeah,
those behind.
I agree. It's not going to be a loss. But what could be a loss is how the Switch 2, do you know anything about the 2.1? Like HDMI, I don't think it has the support for 2.1, actually. I think I've.
Yeah, so from what I'm seeing, it doesn't support 2.1 because it can only output 4K at 60 or
Mhm.
1440 at 120. So it looks like at least in the first gen Switch slash dock combo with the firmware they have, that it only supports the HDMI 2.0. I don't know if that's too big a deal. I mean, the Switch 2 is going to punch well above its weight, but there's very few games I can imagine would actually be able to run 4K at 120 to begin with. So I feel like that's something that an eventual Switch 2 Pro, if they do decide to do an actual mid-gen refresh this time
Mhm.
around,
Yeah.
that's probably when they would introduce that, because that would give it a nice delineation point from the original Switch 2. It's like, hey, this one can now go up to 120 4K instead of just the 60 4K. I say just like it's trivial to achieve 4K at 60, but but it will give them a way to be like, hey, this is what really levels up the Switch 2 from the original. I mean, I'm more than happy with the tech inside the Switch 2 as it is now. I think it's going to be a really relevant console for years to come. Speaking of, I mean, we've seen a lot more. I think CD Projekt Red is probably doing the best PR Nintendo could ask for when it comes to just the raw power and grunt of the specs of the system with all of the official footage that they've been releasing over the last, I don't know, 2 months. They've been trickle feeding for the last 2 months. I mean, it's really showing up. The final, I guess, conclusion after looking over the footage is that it's got way better image quality than the Series S version of the game, just running at a slightly lower frame rate. So while the Series S does have a 60 frames performance mode,
Yeah. It's 30
uh,
on Switch too, right?
yeah, it's got two. It's got 30, and then its performance mode targets 40. So since it's a
Oh.
120 hertz screen, it can actually do one third the rate to have a clean 40 frames per second image. So 40 and 30 are the two modes on Switch 2. And I think that 40 frames per second mode is going to look really nice. I've played 40 FPS on Steam Deck before. It works really well. That's how I played Elden Ring, actually, at 40 FPS.
Is
Just
that
because,
handheld?
yeah,
Oh.
and it also supports it in docked mode as well if you have a TV that could support 120 hertz. So you and I will be fine. And I'm not buying the game myself, just because I don't really have an interest in the game itself. But from a technical standpoint, it definitely looks like a really solid showcase. This is the third party port that people will look at and be like, okay, this is a good baseline for what Switch 2 can do. Kind of like what
Good.
Skyrim was for the Switch back in
Yeah.
2017.
Good for Nintendo though, because CD Projekt Red has always been great at their own fan base. I mean, obviously they had their slip ups with Cyberpunk when it released, and that was kind of a hard thing, but they
Yeah.
overcame it. They kind of did a
They
little
pulled a
bit
No
of
Man's Sky.
a No Man's Sky, and they came
Yeah.
back around, and it was cool to see that happen, and now Nintendo is pretty good, right? They got a underdog kind of you know going on, and they don't have another game like Cyberpunk, and for Cyberpunk to also be completely on the cartridge is a really
Yes.
cool thing as well. So it's like, oh neat, they're kind of spearheading a bit of a quality expectation for us going into the Switch 2, where we know, okay, cool, who else is going to step up that's not CD Project Red? Is it going to be Rockstar next? Is it going to
Ha!
be who is going to be next? Right? I mean, who knows what the Call of Duty is, because they've got like what, the 10-year support for
Yeah.
Switch 2, or beyond that maybe. Um, so that'll be interesting, but. Uh,
I'm glad you brought that up though about the game being fully on the cartridge because that's a big deal. Since the last time we spoke, we've gotten a lot more information about as third-party games, and like it feels like 80% of them are all going to be the game key cards,
yeah.
which I don't personally have an interest in. If I'm going to have to download it on my device anyway, I'm just going to get it digitally so I can, do what I want with it from there and not have to
And
worry about
that's
what's in my
that's
cartridge
probably
slot.
that's probably the main intent too, is to kind of push those sales more, right? For
Sort of. I
digital.
mean, the whole point of the game key card is just for the manufacturer, the developers. I guess no, not neither one of those. What's the word I'm looking for? The publisher.
Publish.
There you
Publish.
go.
Yeah.
For the publishers to save money, because I don't know if you've heard of this, but the rumor is that the only size, or maybe not the only size, I think the smallest size available for physical Switch 2 cartridges is 64 gigabytes. So if you have a game that's significantly smaller than that, I'll give you an example. Bravely Default, the HD remake for that is only 11 gigabytes. Sony would have to
Um,
pony up whatever the cost is to manufacture that 64 gigabyte cartridge if they wanted to do a full release of that game on cartridge. So,
that's going to be painful for all the indie games that come out.
yeah,
Ooh, dude, that's actually really sad. We might see probably the most digital only releases. Now, not to say the key card, because the key card, like you just said, kind of you were.
those have value though. I do want
They
to
do.
specify, like, I don't
Yeah.
like the key cards just because, I mean, I've
Right.
already accepted my all digital future. Since the 3DS, I've basically had
Yeah.
nothing but an all digital library outside of Pokemon because those hold their value so well. So I don't have a value in the key cards, but I know most gamers will, just for the simple fact that it does give you some kind of ownership where you can trade, lend, resell the game. So it's a lot more flexible than a regular digital download. So
Right.
there is a benefit to having a key card versus just buying it on the eShop.
Yeah. You're not wrong. It's just something you have to kind of think about when you buy it. It's like, okay, cool. Don't buy it and go on a trip. Buy it, give yourself some time to download the game, and
Right.
then go on your trip, right? It's kind of just,
That's another like
yeah.
inconvenience that you have to consider if with
Mhm.
those game key cards is not only the download time, but the fact that you have to worry about, do you have enough space on your Switch 2 to download this game?
That's a
Since
good point.
there's nothing on the cartridge with game key cards. It's literally just the license key and a point you in the direction of the eShop. So you have to wait to play your game because you have to download it, and you got to pay attention to what your storage is. I mean, thankfully Nintendo gave us 256 gigabytes to start with this time around, which I think is a great starting point. I know there's been some discussion about, oh, will PS5 and Xbox have a terabyte? And it's like, yeah, those are giant home
But they're not
consoles.
portable, though. Yeah.
Yeah. And I liken it to
Think
new
about
phone
phones.
releases.
Exactly. Think
Exactly.
about phones. It's like we're just now surpassing the 128 base for lots of
Exactly.
devices, or like devices typically on the Android side have been closer to 256 and
Hmm.
512 as a second variant. But go on.
Yeah, exactly. That you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, especially because it's using UFS storage on the Switch 2, which is exactly what Samsung has been putting in their phones for. I want to say like 5, 6 years now. I think since like the S10 or S20,
Oh
like they've
yeah.
been using UFS storage, which is significantly faster than flash memory. So it's I think it's a fair comparison to put it up against phones in terms of the storage space. iPhones only, like you mentioned, only just recently started making 256 the starting point. They've been at 128 for a while now, and even then, it took them a while to get off of 64 gigabytes and jump to that. Samsung 256 is the standard now, so I mean, it's a good starting point, and especially because we have the SD Express slot, you can expand that freely. That's something you can't do on the phone, so UFS storage isn't cheap. If Nintendo had included more storage, it would have significantly raised the price of the console, which we already had a scare with the whole tariff situation, thinking they might go up to over $500-$600. So I can understand why Nintendo went with 256. I think that's a good sweet spot of, giving us enough to work with to start, while at the same time keeping the cost down. But, getting back to the key card thing and the storage thing,
Yeah.
it is a bummer for people that you do lose a lot of the benefits of a physical game of, hey, I can just start it right away and I don't have to worry about what's on the Switch. But it's kind of like a halfway point. You still at least get the ability to sell, trade, and lend the game, and the ability to hot swap cards on your device. If it was me, I think the one complaint that I have with the system is because you have to have the key card in the slot to play it. I wish it was like a 14-day check-in or something where you put the key card in, you boot it up. Okay, now you have access for 14 days. After 14 days, you have to reinsert the game key card to be able to play it again. That way you don't have to keep it in the slot the entire time. Personally, I think that would be better just because then you get more of the benefits of a digital game of not having to constantly swap the cartridge that's in the slot since you only have one of those.
So I find a couple issues with that, not to like rain on your parade or anything, but
Oh, please
the
do.
only okay, so the thing I see two pitfalls there. So, you got businesses like GameFly, you've got businesses like GameStop who have used games that you can return within a 2 week window when you buy them used. So like let's say someone buys a game not but well buys a game from GameStop or rents a game from GameFly, and at the end of the 14 days for GameStop and however long you rent it for GameFly, if it's a day or two or whatever, you know, you could just wait to the very end of that period and then get like another 2 weeks or however long with, I just feel like it would cause some issues, but I get where you're going, like with that train of thought. Like I wish,
Yeah.
I
It's
wish
a
there
tough
was,
balance. It really
yeah.
is. Like the convenience versus like the security. And I see
Mhm.
where you're coming from with that. I still think that would be a relatively minor issue that would be worth, having the goodwill cuz especially because so many third parties are using key cards. Like if your entire third party library is key cards, you're going to struggle with storage, and anytime you want to change games, you have to physically swap the card out. So I'm just thinking of it from that perspective. So people really got to make a decision. It's like, hey, this is going to take up space on my I don't want to say hard drive, on my internal storage anyway. Do I really want the ability to sell or trade this later? Or would it be easier to just have the convenience of always having it on me and just getting it from the eShop? So I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
customers are going to have to make some tough decisions when it comes to those games.
Yeah, I agree. And that's such a bummer to
Yeah.
that was the benefit of, I don't want to say that games on the entire cart is gone, you
No,
know,
Nintendo first
and
party, all of
right.
those are going to be on cartridge. We
And
already know that.
it's the benefit I'm getting to right now. It's being able to pop the cartridge in, not worry about anything, installing, whatever, just shows up and you hit play. And like
The simplicity. We're
that's
losing
what
it.
we've always loved. Right. We were losing the plot, man. And it's like the 3DS, cartridges, DS, cartridges, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, I know I kind of went weird there, but having all of that, right? I mean, GameCube was the only time we had discs, but even then, I'm sorry, like after flash carts we did, and then obviously Wii and Wii U, but it's just interesting that we went away from that, because I think the Wii U was the only one that had discs where you did pop it in, and there might be like a little quick update or something. Not Xenoblade Chronicles X, because that was, we don't talk about that.
That was an outlier. That wasn't the norm. And even then, that was an optional pack. You didn't have to install the resource pack
Was
if you
that
didn't want
textures
to.
and stuff, or like what was that for?
I
I forgot.
I don't know if it was texture specifically, but it was like a resource pack that would reduce load times if you installed it to the console itself. Because otherwise, the console would have to constantly load those in every time you played the game.
Yeah, and it was like 10 gigs or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
it
to
was
improve
chunky.
speed, load speed rather.
Yeah.
It cut down on load time. Um, but yeah, so you've got your pre-order. You're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, we can switch to some positive stuff. So I obviously have my pre-order at Best Buy. That was my biggest priority. Man, what a day that was. Have we recorded anything since the pre-order day back in April? I don't think we have we?
And we didn't record
Yeah, I
that
don't think.
day. Ah,
Okay.
that would
See,
have been fun to record, actually. Like
that
us
was yeah. It
scrambling around for like what, an hour and a half, I think.
it was a scramble and it was a lot of fun just because of all the chaos. But yeah, I was able to get Best Buy pre-order in. That was my number one priority because they had a
Mhm.
midnight launch. Second priority was GameStop, which is where I got my sister Switch to. And you know, it's been nice to see. This is something I wanted to talk about as well. Speaking of pre-orders, a lot of retailers, Nintendo, man, there's a lot we could criticize them for, but I think the launch of the Switch 2, they are absolutely nailing it. So they have a set allocation for pre-orders for every retailer, but they're also making sure that those stores have Switch 2s on hand for the people that missed the pre-order window. And that way they can just show up at whether it's a midnight launch or a 9 p.m. launch or the launch day launch. If you're going doing fifth, so people can just walk in and get it or wait in line before it's given out and get it. And there's a lot of units. I've seen a lot of posts online about like Targets and GameStops will have like 20 to 25 extras available for people that didn't pre-order they'll be able to just sell out right there. I know GameStop, they're doing their event on June 4th starting at 3 p.m. where you can come in, finalize your purchase, trade in anything you want to trade for it.
Yeah.
They're giving out free Red Bulls for pro members. That's neat. It's something. It's something. And also, they'll pre-sell you any of the consoles that they're going to have on hand later that night for 9 p.m. And Best Buy, the reason I brought them up is there's a post that somebody's local Best Buy had 250 total units, and 200 of them were for pre-orders, but then an extra 50 just to be sold out from stock on hand, which is really impressive. Like that's a lot of units available. So I think it's going to sell out anyway, but it's, they always make big PR statements about, oh, our new console has sold out everywhere, but you know, that's not saying much if there's only like 1 to 2 million units worldwide that were allocated for the initial launch. You know what I mean? Like that's just choke holding the supply despite relatively ho hum demand. You know what I mean? So like if Nintendo's able to sell out the Switch 2 at launch, which I think they're going to, like it's actually a really impressive feat. That it's I know we talked about this before, but I think Bloomberg uh, analysts predict that there's going to be 6 to 8 million units available on launch for Switch 2 for like the first weekend, the first day and weekend. So that's a lot of units. That would be the biggest launch ever, surpassing both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, which had 4 million units available at launch, which again, that's still a really big allocation. I mean, kudos to Sony. Like that's a lot of units just in that first weekend to sell out. So I mean, this is not we will never have to see a Wii situation again where you can't get a hold of one of those for months to years on end.
Oh man, those bring me back. I don't think I got one on launch. I think
It
it
took me
took me a
years.
while, but yeah, it took
I
me, I
was in
think,
high school
about,
too, so I mean that
yeah,
context is key. But
same here. I think I was a
even if I had the
junior or
money,
something.
nobody had it.
Right. It was like 2 years before I hopped on. And it was like a Christmas time, but I knew people were losing their minds trying to get one of those for the first like 4 or 5 months sometimes, and it was just dry everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
but no, it's really good that they staggered this release. You know, they had certain websites on that day for third party. Because right now, if you did actually get an invitation from Nintendo, lucky you. But a lot of people are saying that if you did go through with Nintendo, you're probably not going to get yours for another month after release or something like that.
Oof.
That's what I was reading about. So if you manage to secure one with like Target or Best Buy, like you said, or GameStop or Walmart in my case, and you haven't gotten like a return or something like that or a cancellation, then that's really cool. Good for you. You're gonna get it, and hey, maybe it's the same day, maybe it's a day or two after or something like that. Either way, I hope whoever gets them has some time off to just enjoy it. They're not like you know
Yeah.
unable to actually open it and play something. Or I heard that there's actually like, what is it that you? I don't know. I'm hearing mixed things. Have you heard anything about how it needs to connect to the internet in order to like be able to play like maybe Switch One game or Switch
Yes.
Two games, or is it
Yes.
can it play Switch One for like what
I
is
will talk.
that?
I'm glad you brought that up. I will talk of that next in just a moment. But
Okay,
real quick, I do want to talk about like the pre-order situation.
yeah,
So I know there was a bit of a scare with certain retailers a couple days or weeks, I don't remember, after the pre-orders went live, that they thought their orders were canceled. But in reality, what had happened was the temporary holds that were put on their cards were removed because they didn't it looked like they charged for the console right then and there, but then it was actually just a hold to make sure that you had the funds on there. So for anyone that's still confused or, worried about losing their pre-order, just go to your Walmart app, website, or for whatever retailer you pre-ordered at. If you still see your pre-order there, you're good to go. They just removed the temporary hold. This information probably isn't very helpful now, like a month later, but that was something that happened, and I did want to at least bring it up. However, I do know that there were a lot of people that did have their pre-orders legitimately canceled, and that's very unfortunate. But the good news is, as we talked about earlier, there's a lot of retailers, they're going to have extra units on hand. I don't think it's going to be very difficult to get one on launch day. You just may have to call around to see who still has allocations. Specifically, like if you're okay getting the non-bundle version, that's how I was able to get one for my sister. The GameStop near my house, you know, a day after pre-orders went live, still had Switch 2's non-bundle versions available for pre-order right there in store. So I think it's going to be a similar situation on launch day. If you can't get the bundle and you really want to Switch 2 on launch day, you'll probably have some good luck getting the regular Switch 2 without the bundle freely. And if you look around, you'll probably still be able to get the bundle as well. Your best bet is just to line up at like 7 p.m. If you're on the West Coast, 7 p.m. at Best Buy or GameStop to try and snag one of the extras they have there. For those who don't know, the midnight launch, at least here in the United States, is midnight Eastern time. But like Nintendo doesn't really adjust for time zone. So anything that releases at midnight Eastern is midnight Eastern in every time zone. So for us on the West Coast, that's 9 p.m. For those in Mountain Time, that's 10 p.m. Central Time
yep.
is 11 p.m. And then, of course, Eastern Time is 12 p.m. So, like,
Mhm.
if the further west you are, the earlier you can actually get your Switch relative to your own clocks. I mean, it's in real time, it's the same time. But yeah, so I would recommend getting in line an hour or two before the release of the console, what depending on what that is for you, and just seeing if you can get one of those on release that way. But I did want to answer your question though about the whole Switch Day One patch. Is
Right.
there anything else you wanted to add to the whole pre-order situation before we moved on?
No, thank you. I don't think so. Just it's a stressful thing. Uh, but I think it's better handled than the PS5 and
Oh
Xbox.
God, yes.
Like that was really bad with the scalping and like
Hmm.
again, it's the staggering of oh yeah, we got one available here, and then now what was cool about the websites that I thought was that some of us were able to secure one at different times than the other person, so it was nice
Yeah.
to see like, oh, this person's waiting in line, and if you didn't refresh that page until midnight, then you were allowed in or something, or maybe even past midnight, but if I remember correctly. But
Hmm.
either way, it was way better
The
than
queues
how.
worked a lot better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the fact that there were queues was really cool. Like sometimes the websites weren't perfect. Like I remember,
Target.
Target being like, you know, what your
Yeah.
information wasn't showing up and things like that. Like it just,
That was a mess.
yeah, it was a bit fragmented in places. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than feeling like you were competing against a bot. And I think that
Right.
it felt like we were all just competing with each other or
And
ourselves.
actual humans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I was okay with that aspect. It kind of made me feel like, oh, cool. Like I have a chance at this. Like I'm not just going to give up. And you had options, right? You had 4 places you could
Oh yeah.
pre-order, and so that was nice. That's the only thing I would add to it. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, and I'll even just add another little tidbit. I think retailers need to do a much better job of beefing up their servers ahead
Mhm.
of a big launch of any product. This isn't specific to Switch 2. This just happened to be the one that really opened a lot of people's eyes. Like, we are in 2025. Online shopping has been a thing in mainstream society for, I want to say, at least a decade and a half, maybe 2 decades. 2005, and things like Amazon were starting to come up. So, like, this isn't a new concept. This is something that we've had decades to perfect. So the fact that we still have these big box retailers, websites, and servers crashing based on demand of like pre-orders, like that shouldn't happen. We have the technology now to do this properly. And this does extend to Nintendo too. When they did their pre-orders a couple days later, I think it was a little better. I liked their queue system where they just emailed you if you pre-registered your interest, and
Yep.
then you just go to the site and then you stay in line. Their queue system was a little better, probably because they were able to kind of just funnel the traffic better instead of just having everybody trying to access it at once. But yeah, man, it just bothers me that we're still having to deal with like site crashes just to pre-order a video game console. So big box retailers do better.
Yes. uh, but yeah, so do you need to connect to the internet when you open it up out of the box, or like how does that work? Like, is it just dead on arrival? Is it just like a paperweight, or like, does
No,
anybody know? Like,
we do have info. Yeah. So
okay,
Nintendo Prime shoutouts was able to confirm through some of his sources
okay,
that the day one update is only required to play Switch 1 games through backwards compatibility. And I'll tell you why that makes a lot of sense. But Switch 2 games, if you have a physical cartridge, you could just plug it in and start playing immediately because, the software is already made for Switch 2 games. But Switch 1 games, you have to remember, it's not true hardware emulation this time around. They didn't just stick a Switch 2, Tegra X1 on the side in there to play Switch 1 games. It's a hybrid solution with hardware and software. So the keyword being part software. And I don't know if
yeah,
you remember this, but we talked about a while ago after the big Switch 2 reveal that they had a website of all Switch 1 games that were tested, which ones had issues on boot up, or which ones that were playable but had other issues, and things like then ones that were just straight up incompatible. Do
yeah.
you
It's like
remember
a
that?
yeah, it's like a the dark blue. I think
Yeah.
was
The little
right.
bar charts,
Yep,
and they had the PDFs with the list of games and things that were going on. So they've been updating that site, and
yep,
a lot of the games that didn't work, mostly third party. I don't think there's more than like 2 first party games that had an issue, but all of the games that initially said like the further testing required or there's an issue now say plan to be resolved via an update. So chances are what they've been doing behind the scenes, Nintendo, is working with a lot of these third party companies to fix whatever they needed to fix on the OS level so that the third parties didn't have to patch the game itself individually and just have a global solution for a lot of the issues. Because I imagine whatever the issue was is something that affected a lot of different games, and it wasn't just like, a bunch of different things. So it sounds like they were able to fix it on a global level, and that day one patch is basically putting the finishing touches on the backwards compatibility for Switch 1. And that's most likely why it's requiring that update to even try and play Switch 1 games, because it's fixing a lot of critical issues that they found during testing as they were going through the development of the Switch 2. At least that's my 2 cents on it. What do you think?
Yeah, because you said hybrid, so it's like it doesn't have the Tegra X1 on board, and that's going to be more cost effective for them. So it's something we're going to see improve over time since it's software based. So we do have to wait for those
Yep.
updates. We do have to wait for that collaboration with those third parties, and for the rest of the in-house from Nintendo that we'll most likely get first. We'll get those first more than likely than any third parties that don't just work right away. What's interesting is how to do software backwards compatibility. That's a
It's
pretty big
huge.
deal because it's like a lot
Yeah.
of power is being used to do that. And so
Hmm.
now it kind of makes me think like, how is that going to look for, because on modded Switch ones, especially the very first ones. And you know what? The OLEDs actually are more powerful. The OLED switch has a slightly higher clock speed than the first generation Switch and Switch Lite. And so I wonder if with this newer power, if like all of that power is just going to be used for compatibility, or if there is some like headroom available hardware wise to actually maybe give a little bit of like those games that maybe have an unlocked frame rate, maybe they run a
Yep.
little better or something like that. Like I wonder how
We
what
have
the
info on that.
axes will be. Oh, okay, please.
Yeah. So I'm so happy you brought that up. So for the I forget what they call them, the Ask the Developer, I think they're called, the little series of blog posts on Nintendo's website. They've been posting a bunch of these like once every week for since the direct, basically. And it's just giving
Okay,
insights from the developers on,
that's cool.
developing for Switch 2, or in
Yeah,
the case of, when it comes to that, the hardware designers for the Switch 2 talking, they talked about the backwards compatibility, and they said when they were testing games for compatibility on Switch 2, there were many games that without doing anything instantly ran a lot better without any type of patch, because it is a software solution in addition to hardware. It's not just raw hardware emulation. For the first time ever, we're actually going to get a situation where a lot of Switch 1 games will just run better on Switch 2. So we've talked about this. I still think that what they're going to do with the screen being 1080p and handheld mode being 720 on the original Switch, I still think they're going to have the docked profile be the one used in handhelds to make it 1080p for games that had a 1080p target when docked. But in addition to that, so that's one big thing. So automatically, I mean, Switch 2 games, or excuse me, Switch 1 games can already, for the most part, run or output in 1080p. That was just their docked mode. So by forcing the docked profile on Switch 2, even when in handheld, no patch is needed to get most games to run at 1080p. In addition to that, we have a lot of games
Mm.
that you mentioned, unlocked frame rates or unlocked resolution, games that use dynamic resolution scaling. Famously, Doom, I believe Mario Odyssey used it to some extent. That all of the Xenoblade games, they all use a form of dynamic resolution scaling. So those games are going to be able to consistently hit their upper targets more often than not with that extra headroom and power, even without a patch. And for frame rates, we will probably see most games that struggle to maintain their 30 or 60 frames per second target actually able to hit those more consistently as well. And this is all before actually giving us any type of software update to further boost some of these to reach the 60 to 120 frames per second that the Switch 2 can do, or the 4K 1440p that it can do while docked. So I mean, I'm so excited for this in
Nice.
particular. I want to test like every Xenoblade game on day one, just because even before they give us patches, they should still run much better And we already know 12 games that are getting those free patches. Super Mario Odyssey will be a 4K game on day one on Switch.
Oh yeah, yeah, and you're getting better Link's Awakening frame rate. You're getting, and then
Yes.
that's free.
Thank
And then
you.
Echoes of Wisdom, that's going to be
Mm-hmm.
free. And it's like kind of motivates you if you didn't pick it up like myself. Like, oh man, maybe I'll get that one down the line. That'll be fun because I've wanted to play Echoes of Wisdom, but I'm like, man, hope that
Yeah,
runs
that
better on
performance was rough.
Switch.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people are probably fine with it, and that's okay. I'm sure it's definitely feasible and playable. But,
Yeah.
if you've got the hardware and it's sitting there, it's like, okay, cool. And you haven't played the game yet? Pop it in, play it with some better quality.
100%. And I love that those are games that are actually getting patches to further boost resolutions and frame rates. And one of my first games played is going to be Scarlet with that
Yeah.
4K
I'm gonna
60
play
patch. It's going
Violet.
to,
Yeah.
but
I'm going to play the
beyond
DLC.
those,
Beat the DLC like that. I'm excited about that. Sorry to cut you.
no, you're good. That's another thing too. Is the DLC had worse performance than the base game, so it'll be nice to see those
Mm,
running in much higher frame rates as well. Because I mean, I don't think either one of us have been shy criticizing the art direction and performance of Scarlet and Violet. So having a patch that fixes at least one of those, I mean, I can overlook the simplistic art direction if it's at least running well. Problem was when it came out, it was doing neither of those two things. So we at
yeah,
least have the fix to one.
it'll be nice. I can't say I know what the PS5 was like for backwards compatibility in terms of does it have hardware from the PS4 on it. Um, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's just like an architectural thing, but so
Could be.
I'm not completely well versed on that, so I can't speak to it. But with
I know
the
it's not off pure hardware though, because there
yeah,
were certain PS4 games that just wouldn't work on PS5 without a patch. So I think Sony and Xbox have been doing it this way for a while now, where it's a hybrid solution. So what
uh,
Nintendo is doing with Switch 2, it sounds very similar to what those have been doing. Because Xbox is the same way. A lot of 360 games just don't work, or they needed patches to work on series consoles. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that those are probably a hybrid solution.
you're probably right. That makes sense
Now
with
PS3,
Xbox.
that was different. PS3 for PS2, they actually included PS2 hardware to run PS2 and PS1 games on the original
That's
PS3.
why those first models were so expensive. And
Yes.
it cost Sony, they lost a lot. They
Yeah.
lost a lot on that release. And gosh, can you imagine paying $600 for a console in that era of time? Like, I think I waited quite a bit to get my PS3. I think I got
I
it in.
really want one still to this day. I don't have one of those. I've always wanted one of those consoles.
They're nice. I've got two. So,
Nice.
yeah, I've got an 80 gig.
Just rubbing it in.
Yeah, I'm just
Embarrassment of
gonna.
riches over here.
I know, right? Yeah, because I'm really rich. But yeah, like I've got the backwards compatible one that has the Emotion Engine chip on board, which is nice for those PS2 games. But I've got a later edition fat PS3 before the Slims, where Sony is the king of revisions, man, and they're very silent revisions mostly. With the
Yeah.
PS3, you could tell them apart a bit more, but like even the PS3, I think there was probably 7 revisions.
There was a
Um,
lot, yeah. They were
yeah,
constantly, improving things, and I think especially in the beginning they were using cheaper processes and cheaper parts to try and drive the cost down because like you said, they were losing a lot of money on those launch units.
yeah, and then you've got the processor on board that was used was pretty hefty. It was a big chip. And so as time went by, that chip began to shrink in size. By the time they came out with the Slim, I
Yeah.
believe they went from 90 nanometer down to like 45 or even less.
It's so crazy to talk about those sizes now. Like,
Now we have like
we're
3 and 4 nanometer chips.
yeah, I mean, we were still arguing about whether Switch 2 was gonna be on a 5 nanometer or 8 nanometer
Uh-huh.
process, so it just I had to chuckle when you said 90 to 45, like, wow.
We've
They were
come a
chunky
long
back then,
way.
it's 2000,
Yeah.
mid-2000s.
Yeah, it's true. I think it was like 2005 or so. Either way, it's crazy that they're still around. I mean, they still boot. If you took care of it, it was relatively well ventilated area while playing. If you didn't burn it
Mhm.
through the ground, I mean, my backward compatible one still works, and it's not like my own from launch. I bought it secondhand, I think in 2014, but you know, and just so that I said this before we move on, there is the Frankenstein. Have you heard they call them Frankie mods for the PS3? Have you heard of that before?
No, what's that?
So there's people who are very adept at soldering and are that's like their profession, or they're just good at it as a hobby or whatever. There's people out there who offer services to take a chip from one of those slimmer PS3s or even one of those late PS3s that have the 45 nanometer chip and to put that into one of the very initial backwards compatible ones, and that makes it last
Oh,
a
wow.
long time. And so people are constantly looking for a Frankie or selling one, and Frankies are a pretty big thing in the PS3 modding scene, at least more recently now. Just because it's become more known, and maybe those services have gone up, like in popularity and stuff. But I would like to do that with mine at some point. I think that would be cool, just to
Oh,
make the
yeah.
console last even longer.
Kinda future-proof it a little more.
Yeah, I mean, because yellow light of death is a thing, and you know,
Yeah.
components are
Those
just
man,
gonna.
those that generation of consoles had struggles.
And it's interesting, right? That was our first time into the HD space, going from where we came from. So it's like interesting to see that it was a pretty rocky start. PS3 was super expensive.
Mhm.
Xbox was kind of the console that um, spearheaded online gaming in a way that just actually seemed fun and quality. And obviously, it was cool to have it for free on PS3, but it's just a different experience there. And so it was just a pioneer of a lot happened in that period of time. So um, yeah, I just wanted to share that.
No, that's awesome. I mean, if I ever do decide to invest and get myself a PS3, I'll have to look for one of those Frankie mods because that sounds like the way to go.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's crazy to think that Persona 5 came out on the PS3, huh?
Yeah, no, it was originally I was it, it was a cross-gen game, right? Like, the
Yeah.
PS4 was already out
Yep.
when that game finally released, right?
Yep. Yeah.
That's what I
It,
thought,
it,
okay.
it was kind of like a
A
Twilight
tweener?
Princess. Yeah, it was like a Twilight
Yeah.
Princess GameCube slash Wii. It was like a Breath of the Wild Wii U Switch kind of situation where it was like,
I'm so glad they did that too,
yeah,
because that was such a great way to send off the PS3 with one of the greatest turn-based RPGs of all time. And I remember I played it initially on the PS4. It was 60 frames a second right off the bat, and it ran at
yeah,
a higher resolution as well.
yeah. And I think it kind of speaks to the power of the PS4 at the time compared to the PS3.
Yeah.
Man, the
Back when
PS
we actually could see generational leaps.
back then we really could. It's like
Yeah.
it was way more meaningful to go from one to the other. It's like I think 720p, 30 frames on PS3. It's like,
Yeah, I believe it was 720/30, and then it was either 900 or 1080 on PS4 with a
mhm.
basically locked 60 frames a second. So it was, just on the spec sheet already a big jump up. And I speaking of Persona 5, just to go on another tangent, this
Yeah,
whole episode is nothing but tangents, with lots
it
of
is.
triangles drawn all over
It's
this
fun.
roadmap. But I recently jumped back into Persona 5 Royal, circling back to one of our initial things, talking about what we've been playing lately, and I mentioned my
Yeah,
backlog. I'm still in the Royal content of Persona 5 Royal on the Switch,
Oh,
and it's so interesting to see that game running on Switch 1. Like, it is such a great port of the game. Like, what they did with that was just it's so well optimized. I mean, yes, it was initially a PS3 game, but to see it run on a tablet handheld like that, it's so nice. What they did was they rendered all of the 2D assets in full 1080p,
yep,
and then the actual 3D models and environments were rendered at a slightly lower resolution.
yep.
I want to say it was like docked. I think the 3D stuff was rendered at around like 810p or something along those lines docked, and then when it's in handheld it's like 600p for the 3D stuff, while all of the UI and everything is just crisp 720, so it still looked really good. But it never had any like frame rate issues. It was a
Oh,
lock 30 frames per second. It already has a ton of style. We already know this. It's a very stylish game. Just the fluidity and the motion and the animations are so clean.
and the UI benefited so much to what you spoke to with
Yes,
the
keeping
the
that native res.
2D at 1080. It's like it's so crisp, and you're gonna spend. I'm just gonna give you a little bit of a spoiler if you haven't played. Anybody listening, you haven't played any Persona games, you're gonna be spending a significant amount of time in menus. So having that
Yep.
look as crispy as it does
Hmm.
really adds some flavor that I think otherwise would be lost on playing it on Switch. So that's pretty cool. I actually just got to the school trip part of the game, so I just got back from
Huh.
that, and I'm actually playing through. I haven't gotten to the dungeon that comes after that yet. I am looking forward to it. I'm being ambiguous because I don't know how many people haven't played this
Right.
game, so I'm just trying to be safe
10-year-old
about it.
game, but
You know, it's
it's nice. Play Persona 5 Royal. It's one of the
it's
best
fun.
games of all time. I will say though, going back to Persona 5 Royal after playing Metaphor it is a little jarring. I never thought I'd say this, but it's one of those things that really made Persona 5 show its age just a little bit, just because they nailed it and knocked it out of the park so well with Metaphor that just the small little touches and changes to the battle system really they do show up when you go back to Persona 5 Roll. It's still fantastic, but it's just interesting to see what has been modernized from then to now.
Truly, I only played Metaphor for a little bit, but I can see just like what two like 3 hours probably total, so not very long, but I did get to see just a little small peek of you know where Atlas was going in a different direction, which is really cool. I'm sure there's even more that you expressed. I think I asked for some help from you not too long ago, a few months back, and I know I was helping a friend of mine with playing through his playthroughs, and I was doing a little bit of research, asking you for some help, and man, the things I would discover, I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like this is going to be great when I actually sit down and I have time to play that game because it's one of those things where I don't want to pick up and play a game like that. I kind of want to just, you know,
Dive in.
I want to, yeah. And you know what? I know as an adult it's harder to do that. But I've been able to do it with certain games. Like even when I play Final Fantasy 16 right now, I'm at the 80, a little past 80% mark of the game. But
Nice.
each of the chunks of playtime that I've dedicated to that game have always been maybe 2 hour
Couple
minimum.
hours at a
Yeah,
time.
2 hour minimum is what I would want to say is like each session. And I might do a session the next day and kind of
Hmm.
extend that a little bit. So, you know, it might not be like how it was when we were kids, but it's our adult version of it where it's like um, responsible, right? We got stuff to do, but nice to play. It's those are the types of games that are just fun to just not play anything else and just kind of dedicate some time to it. And that's probably
Oh
why
yeah.
it's been hard for me to get into Expedition, just because I want to do similarly with that game. I think it deserves that kind of dedication. Um, and I want to be Final Fantasy 16, but I'm at a weird point in 16 where now I have to choose to play the DLC. I read somewhere so that it didn't spoil it for me, but apparently it's better for the story if you play the DLC toward the very end of the game, because apparently like some very big stuff happens at the end of 16 that kind of like, I don't know, maybe it the DLC loses a bit of credence, maybe, or like it's just not as maybe impactful or something. So I do want to play the DLC, and I do have the DLC for it. And I think I got you the DLC too, right? When I got you
Yes.
your copy. Okay, cool,
Yeah, we have the DLC.
nice, nice. Okay, well then, yeah. FYI, if you're
I'll keep
moving,
that in mind. Yeah, I'll wait
yeah,
till towards the end to play it because
wait,
I was going to ask you that. Like,
yeah.
when's a good time to jump in?
I think
Does it? Is it?
there's a continent that you can move to from your continent you play most of the game at, and there's a continent that it's like you kind of cross over to it. And I think when you do that, I believe that'll be when I play the DLC. I'll probably save somewhere there, and I'll be able to backtrack to the first continent. And I think that's when I'm going to choose. Like, I think that I still have like a few side quests and then like story quests to do. Then it's probably going to start preparing me for the end. And I think that's going to be when I go, okay, cool. Let's just go to the main menu, switch on a DLC, and start playing through that. But
Got it.
yeah, so just a little FYI on that. And of course, you can always talk to me about that game. How have you liked it so far? You've played it a little bit on your laptop, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, now that I've got a couple things tweaked within the Nvidia app, like it runs so well. I'm having it, you know, consistently above the hundreds, and it's rendering native 1080p and upscaling with DLSS and everything, and it looks and
Ooh,
runs super buttery smooth now. I've been really enjoying that. It is a little jarring when you get to a cutscene though, because then it's locked at 30. It's like you could tell when something important's about to happen when you notice the frame rate tank to 30. But I'd actually just beat the Garuda fight, the big one, where you get to awaken for the first time as Clive. So that was a fun time. I love the cinematic nature of the fights. It definitely feels like one big. How do I want to say this? It's a lot more focus on the story and action than
mhm.
previous Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
I did see a little bit of DNA from 14 though, in Garuda's pre-fight when you're fighting her sisters. I forget what their names are, but the two little like offshoots of Garuda, Chiranda or something. I don't know. But there's a little Final Fantasy 14 DNA where it telegraphs an attack and your spacing on the map is what's important because you have to like be, between the little lines that it shoots straight down to dodge the attack. So it was funny seeing those, and I'm like, hey, I recognize this. These are some 14 hitboxes right here.
That's amazing. I mean, there's a lot of the DNA from
Oh
14
yeah.
in the game, which makes sense. I mean, just because
Yeah.
of the director and
Yoshi
everything.
P. We got
Yeah.
Soken on the soundtrack again. So I mean, it does make a lot of sense, but it's just still cool, kind of seeing it almost like as an Easter egg. It's like, hey, I understood that reference.
Yeah, I like that fight. Although I gotta say, that's probably the icon power that I used the least.
Really?
Yeah, it's not bad, but I don't know. So I like to play a little slow and steady in
Hmm.
in that game, but I think Garula or Garuda, sorry. I'm thinking of the
I
Garula.
was like, that's a Persona spell.
Yeah, that's a spell. Yeah, exactly. Um,
A wind spell though, so I mean,
other
hey, you're,
other
you're still
win.
within the same element.
Yeah, that's fun. But no, yeah, I use that one least, but it's the one that probably, if you level it up and unlock all of its like tiered abilities, like and other techniques and stuff, that's the one that allows Clive to move like a speed demon. That one's the
Mm,
fast.
I'll probably enjoy it then.
Yeah, that one's really good for that. I like the hard and heavy hitting. So I've been sticking with a few other different ones. But what's nice about the game is being able to have three different sets. So you can just it's kind of like in
Yeah, I
Kingdom
saw that. You
Hearts
can do presets.
Recom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like having a deck, and you could just always go in there and just edit it out. And I also found that you can mix and match too. That you don't just have to have in the three rows that it gives you. You don't have to have just the red and the blue and whatever else you have set up. You can actually do red and combine, like kind of like the Jin and Golden Sun. You can kind of combine that. You can have them be in one row, and then whichever's the first is going to be like your far away, your long. What is it called? Gosh, long distance.
Like your range attack.
Your ranged attack. I was looking for the word. Yeah, like you pressing the square button on the dual sense, and it's like you do different shots of whatever. But
Did you mean
yeah.
triangle?
Oh, is it? Oh, it
The
is
top button?
triangle. It is triangle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because square
Well,
is your standard attack button.
yeah. Well, that goes to show you. Unless you give me a controller, I'm probably gonna say the wrong thing. Yeah.
Speaking of, I just found out that you can actually charge your spell by holding the button down. I don't know if I missed a tutorial last time I played or if it's just been that long since I played, but I accidentally did that and I'm like, whoa, that sent him flying. I liked that.
Yeah. You'll when you use that enough, you'll just start battles out with that being held so that you can just boost like
Yeah.
right off the bat. And it's just awesome because that doesn't actually take a cooldown either. It's just
Nope.
you
You can
wait
just spam
and
that.
then it's charged and then you let it go. And um,
Yeah.
the
That's a good
dodges are
first strike.
amazing too. I love the dodges because you can chain your dodges along with your attacks. And like, how cool is it to dodge? I've gotten times 14 or 20 dodge before, and I'm like,
Wow.
This is crazy." Like, and you get a bit of a rush, right? Because you're like, "Oh, I don't want to break the score right
Yeah,
now."
there's some real Devil May Cry DNA in it, where it's you're
Yeah.
trying to keep the streak going. And I'll admit, I still would prefer some form of turn-based combat in my Final Fantasies, but I have enjoyed the action element of the game so far. It hasn't deterred me from the game, which was my biggest fear going into it. So I have been enjoying it enough to stick with it. I thought it would bother me more not having a party like to control. But yeah, as I've played it, it really didn't impact me because you still have them there. You just can't directly control them. So it was kind of a non-issue for me as I continue to play the game. So it has been nice being able to, if not fully embrace it, to at least accept the action-based combat and be able to still enjoy the game anyway.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm behind that. It took me some time to get adjusted as well. And controlling only Clive makes it a bit easier, I think, because you become so familiar with him and kind of how
Hmm.
he can be specced out and everything. And having to only focus on one person is kind of nice when there isn't turn based because then now it's like you kind of just flesh him out a little bit more
Hmm.
um,
You could
for
keep
that
focused on it.
gameplay style. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
have Torgal, which is cool because Torgal like you can actually sure he's not the strongest companion, but
He
he can
helps.
really save you in a pinch and like being
I
able
have him
to.
set to auto. It's like I'm just gonna focus on Clive, so
Oh,
Torgal does
oh.
whatever he wants to.
I have him on manual because I've gotten pretty good with the multitasking where
Mm.
now it's just me on the D-pad with Torgal and then switching over to my items. How do you like the items and how they handled that in this game? Like for your replenish, let's say you want to replenish health and things like that.
Um, I'm still, I feel like I'm confusing Stellar Blade with this because I played both today, so it's kind of messing me up a little bit. Uh, I think, I think I have the accessory on that automatically consumes a potion if I need it. So I don't
Oh.
really think about it too much with the potions. Health hasn't really been an issue for me just because I've been kind of taking them slow just to see like when the dodge windows are. I don't want it to devolve into a mash fest, and that it's the same thing for Stellar Blade. You know, I'm trying to learn the defensive mechanics so
Yep.
that I can play it a little bit smarter and, if
It's
needed,
it's good to
be able
do
to
that
switch.
early on, because if you do
Yeah,
that early on, you won't be totally in the dark for those harder fights. Because both
yeah.
Stellar
Don't want to
Blade,
build bad habits.
no, and it's part of the fun of learning the game. But it's also, hey, is it fun, or are you just forcing yourself through it or whatnot? But for both of those games, man, I really enjoyed learning how to just get a little bit better with it. I know with Final Fantasy 16, I'm not probably as good as some other players out there, but same can be said about Stellar Blade. I know there's some fantastic players out there that come
Oh yeah,
from way harder games. I know like Sekiro and maybe even Elden Ring. I know that it's not really like a Souls like, but
yeah.
it
I don't
attracts a
need that.
lot of those players. Yeah,
Not every game has to be a Souls like, so I am
it's
appreciative that
unique. It's
I can
unique. It's its
comfortably
own
get through the
thing.
game
I like
without having to.
I like comparing it to those games, but I know that it's its own thing, and I
Right.
love it for that. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say when you keep going on with it.
For sure, yeah. You'll hear from me as I'm going through it. But let's go ahead and circle back to the Switch 2 now. We do have it coming out in less than a week here. Let me start with this. Do you think that we'll get a Switch 2 port of Stellar Blade and Final Fantasy 16?
16 makes sense. Um, but maybe not right away. Like it kind of feels
Right.
like maybe that would be a cool winter like release for this year, where it's like, oh hey, by the
Oh
way,
yeah.
um, you know, maybe they're working on it, and because here's the thing, the Switch is just coming out, so
Hmm.
um, cool for CD Projekt Red to have been able to release with their game on it. I think that's awesome. And then actually have the whole game on the cart, just fantastic. I hope the same can be said about maybe Final Fantasy 16 if it's a thing, or even with Shift Up's Stellar Blade. I I would I would think that it could run it. I think that it could totally run it, honestly. So it'll be interesting if Nintendo wants to have. I mean, they've got rated M games, so I don't feel like that would be like a reason not to have it on there. I think that it could definitely run it too. Like it runs on the Steam Deck, and the Switch 2 is more powerful than the Steam Deck. So it's like
Yeah. And
it'll probably
targeting specific hardware on top of it, yeah. I could see it running really well and have a performance and a quality mode for sure.
yeah, and like who knows, maybe there's some cool outfits that come out for that version. I mean that.
Oh man, can you imagine like a Zero Suit Samus skin? That would be so cool.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, they could do a lot with it, honestly. But what's amazing about Stellar Blade, I think, going into another year of success is like, they've got Shift Up has a lot going on right now, development wise. They've got
Yeah.
the Project Witches game slated for 2027. They've got the sequel to Stellar Blade 2, whatever they might call it, and that'll be right around that 2027, 2028 mark, and that'll be great. I love that they're taking their time. They're
Oh yeah.
mostly a mobile gaming kind of company, but not to go too far away here. I know that you were just bringing up just that question there. Yeah, what do you think? Like, just tossing it back to you. What do you think? Like, do you think those will come out, or do you think any others would come out if you think those would?
Yeah, I think Stellar Blade seems the more likely of the two.
Mhm.
Just because Square Enix is really focusing on the 7 remake trilogy right now on the Switch. They're doing some pretty heavy marketing there. So if 16
Mm.
does come out on the Switch too, like you said, I think it could be a good winter or maybe early 2026 title. Personally, I'd rather see 14 come to the Switch too. That's just me. And I know Yoshi P was saying he wanted to bring it to Nintendo. So having a console as powerful as Switch 2, that game would run really well on there. That's one of those that could potentially have like I don't know if it's going to have a 120 frames per second mode, but it could easily run at 60 and look really good on there. And with mouse controls, that's one of those that it's like, hey, you get the hybrid controller and mouse controls, have your hotbars be the normal mouse one with just button inputs for everything else. Like that could be a really
That
cool
would be
system.
nice. Yeah, no, I could imagine Final Fantasy online like that, where you can just
Yeah.
switch into it. No pun intended. But like,
Speaking of online,
yeah.
just a side note, I'm really hoping that the Switch 2 has a system where if you're connected hardwired and you undock it, that it keeps the wireless connection active as well so that you don't just instantly disconnect from whatever game you're playing like the Switch 1 does. That is so frustrating on Switch 1.
I don't think I've ever had that.
Yeah, because if you're playing like Splatoon or Smash and someone nudges your dock and it comes loose and goes back in the dock, it will disconnect you. Now, if you're only on Wi-Fi, that's not an issue because it's still on Wi-Fi, docked or undocked. But if you do have a LAN adapter or on the Switch OLED dock with an actual Ethernet port, if you're hardwired in, if that switch becomes disconnected from the dock, it also disconnects you from the internet.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, real frustrating. So I'm hoping that's something that they thought about and have a counter to.
You know what I hope Square Enix does? Since we got a Steam version of Kingdom Hearts, the
Yes,
entire
I know where you're going with
what
this.
if they gave us, hey, you guys bought a digital for the cloud version? Here, we're gonna sell the
$10
physical
upgrade
one.
to get physical.
No, not even 10. Fucking, and I'm sorry, here you go. You guys just have it. Like you purchased it, the cloud version. We're not gonna just have you play the cloud version on Switch too. You can play it hardware. I think that would be really cool. And then, maybe sell it for a little bit cheaper than the cloud versions used to be, or something like that.
Yeah,
And let it come out on Switch 2 already, because that would
I need
be
native ports.
that
I
would be
need them.
awesome. Because then that'll kind of build us up for that inevitable
Kingdom Hearts
Kingdom
4.
Hearts 4. Now that
Hmm.
Missing Link has gone missing. Uh,
Permanently. Lore accurate game.
How
Missing link.
sad is that, dude? Come on, you got to name that shit and then lose it at the same time.
Oh god, it reminds me about Dragalia Lost when it got discontinued. I guess we lost Dragalia.
It was inevitable from the start. It sounds like, and I had a buddy of mine who loved Dragalia, big fan of
Me too.
Dragalia.
That's me. It's me you're talking about.
No, no, no. I remember learning that you liked it, and I was like, oh shit. There's people that play that game. I was like, oh, it's not just my friend that plays it. It's okay. So both of you play it. But yeah, I'm saddened by the missing link disappearance, but I hope that the music that Yoko Shimomura does get released or incorporated in some way, either in like flashbacks or something like that. Like, make his little spin-off game. Take the assets that you put for Missing Link, make it into just a little, spin-off game before 4 comes out, or like,
3.8 prologue
yeah,
masterpiece
yeah,
reconnected.
yeah, 3.1 or whatever. You've got
They'll figure it out.
you're naming. You guys can name it whatever, and it doesn't matter. We're going to be expecting some decimal to be in the name, and
Right.
it's fine, and it's
Or a
okay.
fraction. They're not opposed to fractions in their titles either.
Oh man, 358 over 2,
Oh my god.
358.
Hey,
Oh
here
man.
it is. Kingdom Hearts square root of 4. You're welcome, Square Enix. That one's free.
Please don't do that, Square. I beg you. But yeah, let's see what else. What else?
So
I know, Metroid Prime 4. Are you excited about that?
I am. I'm not even a big Metroid fan, but the fact that they got that game with a 1080 120 and a 4K 60 mode, and it looks incredible. Great art direction. It just it's going to be a good one whenever it does release. I'm a little shocked. I mean, not now because we already know and accept it, but I was initially a little shocked that it wasn't a release title for the Switch 2. I figured that was going to be one of those that kind of launched with the console.
Yeah.
So that was initially a surprise, but I mean, I can understand. Mario Kart is a much bigger hitter. Speaking of, to change topics once again,
Yeah.
we're fine. We're loosey goosey here today. Did you hear that Mario Kart World started development back in 2020?
Yeah, I did. It's been going on for a while. I thought it was 2019. Okay.
Or no, you're
Yeah.
right. I think it was early. It was either 19 or 18. They started development
Yeah. But
in that
that's
year.
a while back.
Yeah, and
It's
basically they realized that what they wanted to do couldn't be done on Switch 1 without a ton of compromises, so they shelved it for Switch 2, and basically that's why we got the booster course pass. I
see
know everybody
that information was twisted online recently
in what way?
to try to make it seem like they could have released it on Switch 1. And I'm like, no,
That's
I,
not what they said.
that's not what happened either. It's like,
Right.
it's sure you got to think of it this way, right? Hardware's always got to, you know, these are all designed on PCs. So you have to think,
Yeah.
okay, they're scaling it down to whatever they end up designing their chips to be, their RAM, their all that stuff. So it's like, okay, cool. They're working from a higher place and then they're bringing it down to that
Yep.
console level. And so it's like, sure, it's a decision they have to make. Sure, they could have maybe made two versions, but then now they're going to have to support a Switch version. And then there's quality control, right? So then it's like, do you want all that focus to be off of the second title? And like, there's always going to be people that debate, like, oh, well, it doesn't look
Yeah.
that impressive compared to what could have been possible, or like, if we're getting like Metroid Prime 4, for example, and it's like that's been in development. I mean, think about that. That's probably been in
Yeah.
development even longer than
Just as
Mario
long,
Kart
yeah,
World
if
or
not
around.
more.
Yeah, and that comes out with two versions, right? We're getting the Switch 1, we're getting the Switch 2, but then you take a quick pivot and you look at Mario Kart World, and you know what? Sure, at the surface level, it's okay, cool. You know what? I can see a couple animations. I can see a couple, different things. Okay, it's open world. It's got this aspect where you're just kind of
Mhm.
racing through and you don't stop, and so the adrenaline never stops. Like you kind of lose that momentum in standard Mario Kart, and so you're thinking, okay, it takes more power to do all of that,
Right.
but then you know, it's like I said about the quality. Right now they're going to have to support online servers that are for the Switch One version. They're going to have to, and I imagine they probably don't cross with each other. And if they do, I don't know. But like, ultimately, what I'm trying to say is, you know, have all of that go toward the new game. And you know what? It is a system seller.
It really
It's
is.
and you do think of it business wise, not greed wise, but business wise. It's like you do need to have something that makes people
You
want
need a console
to
seller.
buy the console, right? And now you're
Yep.
probably thinking, well, Breath of the Wild, and I mean you as in not you, but whoever's listening, it's like Breath of the Wild had a Wii U release, and then it had the Switch release, and that's really interesting because it's obviously a first player game. It's not a multiplayer game like Mario Kart,
Mhm.
but that's a system seller, and that's a little different. But here's the thing: what was the install base for Wii U compared to what became of Switch One? It's like, I mean, I Switch One probably within the first 6 months killed the Wii U. I think we used to laugh about that. We used to be like, man, like look at how many Switch ones are out now. It's like it completely dwarfed the Wii U install base. Um, I say install base as in whoever had the console, but like what I'm trying to say overall is with Breath of the Wild, it's like it kind of made sense for it to come out for the Switch One, and we knew that they even tested that game out on the Switch on the Wii U originally. Remember when we used to have the map? Gosh, I wish they kept the map with the Breath of the Wild version, but then nobody would buy the Switch version. So that's probably not true, but you know what I mean. I do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I get you, and
Yeah.
they kind of neutered the Wii U
Mm-hmm.
version just to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that Switch was the
Yep.
best possible way to play the game. But I do wanna make some comments on what
Yeah.
you mentioned about, the burden of potentially having both the Switch 1 and Switch 2 version of World. So it actually began development in 2017 as a Nintendo Switch title. But they faced several performance challenges on the original Switch. There were multiple things that they wanted to do that just could not be realized on the Switch without making some major compromises. And we're talking things like, the 24 racers was a big deal. That wouldn't have been able to be done on Switch without some massive cuts. The open world obviously is a big thing. That's a very taxing thing on the hardware budget, having to render an entire open world, as well as making sure that all of this is running at 60 frames a second. Mario Kart in 30 frames a second just would not look right. I mean, it's been 60 plus since GameCube. 60 frames a second was the standard. And pretty much any racer should be in 60 frames a second. That's one of those genres that you really need the extra frame rate. And they would have had to make too many cuts and compromises to make that Switch version. I feel like a good comparison is like, look at Age of Calamity, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. It was so ambitious that they wanted, these really high resolution models, like similar to Breath of the Wild, and so many enemies on screen at once. They had to make so many cuts to make it work, and it still could not meet its performance target. It would have been a very butchered experience versus something like you mentioned Breath of the Wild and Metroid Prime 4. Both of those games work as cross-gen titles because the compromises that they were able to make on those had nothing to do with anything core to the gameplay. They were able to get both of those running just by adjusting things like frame rate, resolution, draw distance, lighting, stuff like that. Stuff that's on like the graphical side of things.
Yeah.
Whereas the things they wanted to do for Mario Kart would have required too much of a compromise to get on Switch, and too many core things changed. So I think that's why they went that way. And honestly, I remember when the Booster Course Pass was announced, and everyone's like, "Man, that's so random. Like, why are they deciding to make DLC for a massively old game from like 2014 or whatever Mario Kart 8 originally launched on Wii U?" It's like, okay, we're getting DLC for a port of an older game. But now it makes a lot of sense. Now that we have this context, it's like, okay, this was their way of making sure we had some type of Mario Kart content in the Switch era without just relying on old games.
Since it was already a port, and it's kind of funny because do you remember the Wii U version and how it had its own DLC like Animal Crossing and Hyrule?
Because it was 24 tracks originally, or 24? I think it was 24 tracks originally, and then with the DLC, it boosted up, or 32 originally, and it boosted up to 48.
Yeah,
with the 2 DLC. Yeah, so we got DLC for a DLC for a DLC.
That's crazy. But you know what? It kept us going all these years, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still going to be a really solid Mario Kart game. I know a friend of mine, she just moved into her apartment for the first time. Shout out to her. Not that she listens to these, but I helped her get a Switch, and I gave her my copy of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, like the hard copy, and I was just like, hey, because that's what she plays. That's it. That's pretty much it. She's not really a gamer, but gotta say, still such a wonderful thing to have if you just want to play something on the side. Like that is endless fun. You can never not enjoy your time playing that game, and that's what's awesome. I hope that Mario Kart World has a little bit of that kind of classic feel. I hope they don't lose that not that I doubt they'll lose it. If anything, it'll probably be an evolution where it's like, oh cool, it's like that, but it's got this and it's got this, and maybe there is like a bit more of an arcade mode, and that's kind of what I'm talking about right now. Is because like, okay, cool, we know it's open world, but we've got
but it's still got the classic, Grand Prix and all that. That stuff isn't changing.
Yeah, and if anything, they have what's that new mode that everybody's talking about?
Knockout Tour.
Knockout Tour. I really want to try that so bad.
It looks really fun, yeah.
Yeah, that looks great, and that's the evolution I'm talking about, where it's like, oh, neat, like you guys came up with something I've wanted, and it's kind of funny. Before Mario Kart World was announced, I used to say something like, "Man, how cool would it be to have like?" Did you ever have an iPod back then?
No.
okay, well, you remember shuffling your songs on whatever MP3 player you had and just it picking one randomly? Like, I wanted that for Mario Kart, where it's like, you just, you don't choose a cup, you don't do whatever. And then boom, they introduce Mario Kart World where it's like they kind of connect with the different ones. And so there's probably a bunch of different like combinations of selections and cool stuff
Yeah,
like that.
I see
So,
what you're getting at. Like
yeah.
there could be multiple different knockout tours using the same courses, and the variety is in, the bridges between each course, because
Right.
it's those in themselves, people aren't really thinking of it this way, but those intersections, those little like connectors, are basically their own courses as well, in addition to the main ones there. And that's something they had to really like connect everything together with. They had to really plan that out to make that work.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine that was an easy task.
No.
Because
That's why they couldn't do it on Switch. Like
and that's why it's running on the Switch 2. And
yeah.
let's be real, the Switch 1 hardware, man, is so dated. Not to get on that. I know that horse has been kicked a lot, but it's like, oh man, it's just it's nice to get something new, cuz it's I'm so glad. Think of it this way, right? I'm so glad the concept of the Switch
Yes.
and like yeah, it being a handheld, because think about it, right? It birthed the PC becoming handheld kind of like thing, where it's like that became a thing because of the Switch, where it's like they did it first, and like in a way where it just wasn't like a cable sticking out of your console and going to your TV. It's like no, it's a drop solution. You play, you pick up, you keep playing, and like that concept is, I believe, what really brought the Switch success.
Yes.
It wasn't the
Dude, we
power that
take
it
it for
had.
granted just how
Yeah.
well it just works. Because I have a dock for the Steam Deck, but it's not the same thing as just sliding it into it and having everything just
Hmm.
automatically happen. Because then on the Steam Deck, you got to adjust settings, make sure that the resolution is matching what your TV is. Like, there's
Yeah,
so much more tinkering involved that I fully agree with you. The concept of the Switch to this day still works magnificently.
that's it, and that's what gave us something like now this with the Switch 2, because of the success. It's massive, and like all those years, dude. And remember, all don't you dare forget all of the cool ports we got, the Dooms and
The Witcher
The Witcher
3,
3. Good point. Like yeah,
Persona 5 is a huge.
so it's
That's one
like
I wanted for years.
we've got. I mean, even Final Fantasy 7 Crisis Core Reunion. Like it's really
Yeah.
cool. We got stuff on there that almost doesn't make sense, but because of the success, again, because of the concept, the success
It's
of the
brought third parties
sales,
back.
third parties were like, damn, this is way better than Wii U.
Mhm.
Like, let's actually make the sacrifice, and we're going to
Put in
bring,
effort to make a good port for most of the companies.
for most of the companies,
Yeah.
we're not looking at you, MK1, but yeah, like that's what I feel is like overall, this
Dude,
company
Nintendo's
did
in
well.
such a good position because of that, because of the work
Mhm.
they did trying to rebuild those relationships with third parties. There is a very good chance that a year or two from now, that the Switch 2 is the console, like the primary console of a lot of players, because everything is going to come to it.
Exactly. And why else do you think they have mice as Joy-Con now? And it's like, maybe they want a little piece of the PC kind of pie, where it's like now you can sit down, and it's not just tabletop. Now it's like having a full on desktop,
Yeah.
with your mice, and that's really cool. I So going to Mario Kart World, that's a new IP. Were there any other games you were looking forward to on release? I know we should probably wrap this up here, but I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask you: Are you what are you looking forward to maybe picking up outside of maybe Mario Kart
Oh,
World?
yeah, I'm glad you asked that. So here's my launch lineup. So
Okay.
Mario Kart World with the bundle, obviously. We're gonna have Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom Switch 2 versions, just because they're free with the
Mhm.
internet subscription, so we're gonna have
Yeah.
those as well. Got the GameCube games, but in
Yep.
terms of other games that I'm gonna like buy, I actually already have Hogwarts Legacy
Oh,
because Portkey Games did a thing where you can upgrade it for $10 if you have the digital version on
digital.
Switch One.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
able to buy the Switch One version, which was on sale for like $17, and then get the $10 upgrade. So I have the Switch Two version for just under $30. So day one, ready to go. I already have a Switch Two game besides Mario Kart World and Bravely Default.
And you haven't
But
played that one yet, right?
nope,
Hogwarts Legacy.
nope. And the Switch 2 port looks to be a decent port. I've saw Digital Foundry's breakdown on it, and
Okay.
it looks pretty good. This is definitely going to be in one of those kind of B tier ports where it's not the same level of work and care from CD Projekt Red, but it still looks to be a very, very competent port that improves literally everything from the Switch 1 port. Because that thing was a broken mess. That's the Switch 1 port is not the same game even because it has like loading zones. It couldn't do the open world correctly. So I'm curious to see how good it looks and runs on Switch 2. Besides from that, I am also going to get Fast Fusion. That's no brainer. $15 on day one. And they actually just announced that the day one patch will give it a full 4K 60 frames per second mode. And they're
Ooh.
also still working on a 120 frames per second mode as well.
Does that one come with a hard copy game, or is it just key card or
I think it's digital only.
digital only? Okay,
Yeah.
that's not too bad though.
Yeah. But they're selling for $15.
I mean, that's a great price for starting
Mm-hmm.
out. You know, gosh, what was the something RMX, fast RMX? Was that
Fast
the,
RMX.
yeah,
That was the
that's on the
that was the
Switch,
one on
right?
Switch One, and it was
Yeah,
$20 at launch.
right. I remember that one. I didn't.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah,
great demonstration of what Switch One could do, and it was a great multiplayer game. Speaking of, Fast Fusion is going to have game share. You're going to be able to play with just one copy of the game.
oh, that's right. Oh, how cool! So you can even do multiplayer like that.
Yeah, it's basically going to be the greatest tech demo for Switch 2 you can have. Like it has all of the features built in. It's going to look fantastic. HDR support, of course. Multiple different graphics profiles to choose from. I think there's like 4 different ones you can choose depending on what combination of like detail and frame rates and resolutions you want.
It's cool to see 4K on Nintendo. That's mind
Yeah.
blowing still. Um,
Oh,
well,
one other game.
yeah,
Before I pass it off to you, the other game that I'm getting because they also announced an upgrade path, Fantasy Life I. This is a game
yes,
I've been waiting for. I popped
that's.
off when it was first revealed. I was so happy to see a sequel. Do you know how much the upgrade is going to be for Fantasy Life I from Switch 1 to Switch 2?
Yeah, I think it's like what, $7?
No.
Oh, Switch One to Switch Two.
Yeah.
Oh, right, right. I don't know. What is it?
$2.59.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I'm like, wait, he didn't say anything when I said seven, so it's probably a lot cheaper. But I had no
Less
idea.
than a soft drink at Jack in the Box.
Oh, here we go. Okay, well, you know, that's a pretty big deal because that game, that game deserves some limelight. Like, that's actually one of the ones I want to play. I'm looking
Oh yeah.
forward to that, so maybe we can play together.
Hell
Um,
yeah.
a, and I would say, have you heard of Survival Kids?
Yes. So I remember when it was revealed in the direct, and I was like, okay,
Yeah,
whatever. And then
right.
they showed the Game Boy version. I'm like, oh, this is based on something. It's not just some random shovelware they came
No,
up with.
dude, it came out in '99.
Yeah, they just added it to the Game Boy
It's
NSO.
on the online. Yeah, I know. I think they added that, Gradius, Kirby's Star Stacker, and the Sword of
Yep.
Hope recently. But
Decent pull for like this late into the game.
not bad. I know the Game Boy. They're still pulling a decent amount. Like the library is probably well over 50 or 60 now. Um, but yeah, I was looking at Survival Kids, and it looked like a really fun because I mean it was based pretty much took inspiration from Zelda and Pokemon, and it's got very the puzzle aspects of it, and I like that it's got online with your friends. So if you get it, I'll have it. I don't know how much it will cost. I haven't looked at the cost just yet, Let me see if I can actually pull it up right here. I don't know what the cost will be yet, but either way, it comes out June 5, right on release. Konami is releasing this, so hey, if it's like a $20 or $30 game, this could be pretty cool. I think just to kind of play around with, and you know, if you've got friends that are online with it, I think that it's only on Switch 2 for this one. Um,
Yeah, I don't think that one's on Switch One, but it is a $50 game, so it is a little cheaper than
oh,
full releases.
okay, so it's more than what I was expecting, but that's okay. I think it's one of those things where you're going to see a pretty wide range, right, when it comes to pricing on release, where you're going to see maybe some. Here's the thing. Survival Kids probably has a pretty good replayability and whatnot, so who knows. But I would say between that and Fantasy Life High, I know Bravely Default is not going to be available right off the bat,
What do you mean?
right? Or is it first
No,
day?
that's a day one.
That's a day one. I thought that it was
Yeah,
like 2 weeks or 3 weeks later.
no. Deltarune
Oh.
too. That's another one we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, because then, man, because I never played. I mean, I never played past the 10-hour mark on Bravely Default on 3DS.
Oh man,
So I think that it'll be pretty cool to actually
you got to
experience
tap
it.
in.
Yeah, I think that'll be cool because I always love the music. The art style still seems pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. There's quite a few things to be excited for in that regard. Do you think we're gonna just briefly here before we wrap? Do you think we're gonna get like different apps on the Switch too? Like how we only had the YouTube and the Hulu and I think Crunchyroll. Do you think we'll
I
get
really
anything
hope
else?
so. Because going back to that list of games with patches and stuff,
Yeah.
Crunchyroll and Hulu are confirmed, and YouTube are confirmed to just not work on Switch 2, probably because the way they use the browser API. So I'm really
Mm.
hoping this means that all of those companies are working on native apps for it. Because what we got on Switch 1 was kind of embarrassing. Let's get a Netflix app on there.
Yeah. Get Netflix. Get Max. Get you know.
We need
Plex would
those.
be
Come on.
cool. Man, that would be amazing to have.
No
But
way.
here's
Nintendo ain't putting Plex on there.
I, here's the thing. It's like all our TVs have it. And I know that it's like that's probably their excuse. It's like, well, you already probably have a device near you that has the ability to cast or
But it's still nice.
AirPlay. It's just nice because here's the thing. This is kind of what my segue was with this thought was the Switch 2 is huge, dude.
Yeah, that's
So
8
that
inches.
have that in your hand and be able to enjoy content like that, that's way more. See, I think the handheld this time, it being as big as it is, as much as I'm more of
It's a
a
better fit for like video. I
correct,
I see it.
correct, exactly. Just like how we look at how big our phones are now. So
Yeah.
it's like it's again, it's for video consumption. So it's like Switch 2 is already in that ballpark of kind of big screen game
Yeah.
console, and it's like I am not someone who cares for that, but please bring us something that's not just video games that we could just how cool is it that
Yeah,
we
a
could
media
treat it
device.
like it's a tablet? Exactly. And it's like,
Dude, can you imagine? Oh, you know what? I just thought of something. This could be why we don't have apps on there yet for videos. Game chat. They don't want people streaming their movies and stuff. But man, that would be such a cool way to do like group movie night
well, you
if
could
they did.
probably, yeah, but
Or
you
they could
know,
black screen it like
there's a
they
way,
do.
yeah, here's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, they could probably go, like, oh, game chat's only available in these titles, but you can't do it
It you can't
here.
though. It's a console wide feature.
Oh, it's a console. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, then, well,
They'd have
then,
to just
yeah.
black screen it.
They would have to do that. That's a really good point that you bring that up, Zero. I had not even thought of that. Okay,
Me
yeah.
neither. It just occurred to me. I'm like, oh, now it makes sense because I think it's lame not wanting to watch things together because of like I don't know piracy concerns. But I mean, game chat having piracy. I don't know. It just I could see why they haven't done it. Even though I think that would be such a cool way to advertise the feature. Like, hey, movie night with your friends.
Just bring Discord, please, Nintendo. Just bring
Oh
Discord.
man,
Bring
I'd love that.
Discord. Get it done, and like give us where it's like here's what I want, and then I'll actually say goodbye. But like, give me Discord as an option down the line, because maybe game chat doesn't. Not, I'm not saying that it's not going to do well, but there's a whole ass button on my controllers that I can't even use if I don't have online. Please let me use that with something like Discord if you ever bring it. And like, how cool would it be to just, you know, map it to that, or hop on Discord and boom, I can join you for like a movie night or whatever. It's like, it'd be nice if the Switch could do that, even use the webcam and stuff. And like,
Oh, that would be
they
awesome. That'd
just,
be such a cool way to do movie night. Like Netflix has a
yeah,
real prime opportunity to like partner with Nintendo and make that like an advertised feature. It would be such a huge deal.
it's a way to sell the webcam. It's a way to
Mhm.
sell the console. It's a way to sell software.
Netflix
That's
subscriptions
Yeah.
even.
Open the API. Don't make it all closed in. Like, please give us themes. Like, I mean, like, I could go off, but I'm gonna stop. So
No, I could see the future, but I agree with you. We've been on here for quite a bit now. We definitely have had a lot to say goodbye to the Switch era. The Switch 2 era will be upon us the next time that you hear us talk. But with that being said, I am Zero.exe signing off. I'll let you take it away, soldier.
thanks everybody for listening tonight. As always, it's always good to talk with you, Zero. And until next time, I hope y'all don't lose your pre-orders for whatever reason. And if you do, I hope that there is plenty of stock out there. And also keep yourself safe. Don't use any diapers for the wrong reasons. And have a good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.